This activity is made possible by the voters of Minnesota through a Minnesota State Arts Board Operating Support Grant, thanks to a legislative appropriation from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund and a grant from the Wells Fargo Foundation, Minnesota.
Hi, welcome to the Schubert Club Music Museum Mini. My name is Kevin Newton and I play the horn. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the history of the horn. This instrument is also sometimes called the French horn, but the French variety has a slightly different kind of valve set, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. This instrument is actually from Germany. The first dedicated horns were made between 300 and 400 years ago, and they were actually made for fox hunting. So this was never intended to be a musical instrument. The reason it's designed like this is because it's easy to carry under one arm while still holding the reins of the horse with the other. It has a large bell that faces backwards because they needed to communicate over long distances and they didn't have cell phones. So they invented this, and when people would go out fox hunting, there were two very important people at the front of the hunting party. The huntsmaster, who was really leading the party, and a secondary person that rode to their right called the huntsman. And the huntsman is the person that would carry the horn. And when the huntsmaster would decide that they needed to go left or go right or stop, there were calls that the huntsman would play so that everyone would know what to do. Over time, composers decided that they wanted to capture the sound of the hunt in their music, namely in opera. So I'm going to play a little piece for you that was inspired by the hunt called Le Rendezvous des Chasses by Rossini. So a very interesting historical fact about the horn is that many of the people that filled the role of huntsmen were actually enslaved Africans. One of the most famous of which was Cato, who was a horn player in the early 1700s. He actually became one of the most famous horn soloists in all of England during that time period. Another very famous horn soloist from the 1700s, a man of European descent, an Austrian-born horn player by the name of Joseph Lloyd-Gibb, also gained a lot of fame for playing the concertos of composers like Hoffmann and Joseph Haydn. He became very good friends with the composer Mozart, and Mozart's four horn concerti are actually inspired by Joseph's playing. So a very important piece of information about these pieces of music, which are masterworks and are considered standard repertoire for horn players, is that they blend this hunting horn tradition with the more classical sensibilities of Mozart's writing. So as I play some of Mozart's fourth horn concerto, I want you to listen to see if you can hear some of that hunting horn lineage. said, the first dedicated horns were made in Germany for fox hunting, but the design for the horn actually comes from nature. In the ancient world, people used to play things called shofar, which actually were actual animal horns that were hollowed out, and they would use them for similar things. They would be calls to battle or ways to communicate over long distances. And so they took that design and they made this from it, realizing that it could be used backwards. The instrument, like all instruments, works by creating vibration. And the horn is interesting because it's actually just an amplifier for what we do here. In music, we call both lips the embouchure, and we form them to create a vibration by buzzing like this. And this is just a very complicated amplifier for what I just did. So when you look at this, you see all of this interesting plumbing that happens on the inside of the instrument, and these are known as valves. The first horns did not have these. The reason that these exist is because we wanted to have the instrument easier to play and have a wider range of musical capabilities. But as I said, the natural horn didn't have these. They actually looked a lot more like this, which is something you could probably make at home. This is made out of a hose and out of a funnel, and the sound is made the exact same way. So whereas I would play into what is called the mouthpiece, you can actually just do the same thing into a hose and produce a sound. So these valves here basically work that when I blow through this tube here, the air travels through this long pipe, goes into the instrument here, and then it would naturally just go around and avoid all of these. But when I press down a valve, it redirects the air to go through this tubing, which allows for a different set of sounds. And same for when I press 2 down, it goes through 1, and then through 2, and then out through the horn. Same with 1 and 3, 1 and 3, and then open is open. So we get a lot of variety of sounds. But you may have noticed that I put my hand in the bell when I play. The reason for that is that this is still a very imperfect instrument, and so we use the hand for tuning purposes. When there were just natural horns, kind of like the one that I just showed you with the hose, they had to use their hand to manipulate the pitch. So, for example, to play a chromatic scale open, you'll notice I will not use any vowels for this, they had to use their right hand to do so. And you can see how that might be very difficult to do at quick speed. And that's why the music for the horn is early music for the horn is very, very much in arpeggios, la la li la la, and in simple scales, ah. It wasn't until much, much later that we got these interesting valves that allow us to play all of the interesting music that you're used to hearing the horn play today. Thank you so much for watching. Please come check out the Schubert Club Music Museum.